Your businesses are getting better connectivity overall. They can donate a portion or all of their earnings to the community itself. I can't help but think that this could be scaled up to the municipality level. I do know the mayor, so I am hoping to approach her and with a plan to do this like citywide.
How am I turning my internet into money? And I give them the 30-second talk. It's always, how much am I going to make? Well, how many nachos are you going to sell? I can't really tell you that, but I can tell you what your percentage is going to be.
That hotel is earning extra revenue. I'm talking to an office building. They pay for the service where I can come in, update their network, and then now instead of paying for it, they can get paid for it. I think that that's sort of marvelous, and I see that future, and that's why I'm doing this.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the High Signal Podcast with Helium. I am Sam Lewis, your host, and super excited about the episode today. We want to highlight the voices of a couple of our hotspot deployers. Really want to take this opportunity to talk to those that are on the ground building the network, sort of talk a little bit about how they discovered Helium. I think a lot of folks are interested in what it looks like to deploy in practice, some of how that process works, challenges they face, and just some of the unique stories that some of our deployers have to share. So we have Kevin from Flywheel Systems and Zach from Lone Star on with us today. How you guys doing?
Hey, good. Nice to be with you.
Having the day I deserve. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Let's start out just with quick introductions. We'll start with you, Kevin, but just a little bit about yourself, your company, where you're based, and sort of how you got into Helium.
Yeah, so I'm Kevin, Flywheel Systems. I started it in 2020. I got into crypto. I think getting into Helium goes back to me getting into crypto. I got Bitcoin. Got into Bitcoin in 2013, and then really was like sort of interested in the sort of utility of Ethereum a couple of years later, and was sort of like looking for projects that like could provide some like real world use case. And that's when I came across Helium. I ended up buying my first Helium hotspot in 2019. And actually at the time you could pay in Bitcoin. It was like a real manual process with whoever I was talking to at the time. But so yeah, it was like I took Bitcoin profits and bought my first Helium hotspot, and the rest is, kind of a crazy long journey, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah. So, similar to Kevin, I got into Bitcoin pretty, I don't want to say early, but not, it wasn't yesterday. It was in like 2017, I believe. Bought my first ASIC miner as a S9, and everyone thought I was crazy. It was like $1,500 and made a ton of noise, made a ton of heat, made a ton of Bitcoin, which was cool, especially now. And I kind of didn't think too much more of it. I was into GPU mining Ethereum when it was proof of work. And then when COVID hit, I started seeing videos for Helium, and there was people running around posting videos, like I think it was on TikTok, of sticking hotspots, just the IoT hotspots, just randomly in buildings. And it was like the tagline was, "This thing makes me X amount of money, and it's just that easy." And I was like, well, what is this? And then I kind of did a deeper dive into the IoT network. And I was like, wow, this is actually really, really, really cool. And that's how I got introduced to Helium. And now here I am 5 or 6 years later, and just still as excited as ever about it. Yeah. Oh, just following your lead. That's all.
No.
Yeah, Zach, I was going to say, you become a little bit of a deep in celebrity.
Oh my gosh,
you are.
You should probably be
Oh, no.
this for
You
us.
guys are far too kind.
So tell me, each of you, what was your first hotspot deployment? I think it may go back to the IoT days for both of you. I don't know, Kevin, if you did IoT as well, but Zach, I know you have.
Yeah, I had that first device in 2019, and then COVID hit, and I didn't pay attention to it for a couple of months because I was dealing with my other company, which was a travel reservation company, and obviously that doesn't go over so well during COVID. So dealing with that, I checked back in. I was like, wow, I'm earning lots of H&T here. This was before it even went to market. And then I think, a little bit later, it was like 1 cent, 2 cents. And I was listed on CoinGecko at like 11 cents. And at this point, I'd already paid for the first device, with the agent he had already earned. And I was like, wait a second, could this be a business? And then that's when Rack came out with their devices, and I bought 100 of those. And I finally got them like in October and just started handing them out to friends and family. I was earning even more, right? And then by that time, the price is going up. Um, I guess early in 2021, I started putting, I had a form on the website that offered free hotspots to who wanted one, and I'd share the earnings. So it was, first, nobody was contacting me, and then I had 100 people a day contacting me, right? So I started putting them up on roofs in 2021, started with my house and then a friend's business and then other businesses and stuff like that. And I'd already purchased another 150. I was waiting on those. Everybody remembers those days. And yeah, so I had 250 IoT devices out in the world
Oh,
at that
wow.
point. Yeah. So
So when I first got into the IoT network, you're still able to get the DIY keys. So I think I still have an unused DIY key. So, because I mean, then I was like, wow, well, Rack will make these darn things, and it's way easier. So let's do that. I think like a lot of folks, the first hotspot was at my house, but then I really started doing a deep dive into how radio frequencies move, and so I'm pretty fortunate to where I'm in a part of the country where there's rivers, and radio has this kind of cool thing where it will kind of skip on water. And so I was trying to deploy hotspots near the rivers around here, because that was back in the days where you're incentivized for really far coverage, which ended up being not that valuable, but it was a cool thing to do to see how far the signal would go. And, seeing this little tiny device shoot a radio signal, 75 kilometers was phenomenal. And so, that was like the first, and then I started, realizing to have real utility with that is to have things out and up. And so, a lot of that resonates still with the with the mobile network now. So that was kind of how I got started.
Yeah, it is really incredible with the IoT. Yeah, I remember when I got one of my first IoT miners, I was in San Francisco and like my apartment just happened to be up on one of those huge hills. And all of a sudden, you remember the old OG Helium app where it would show like where it was beaconing out to. And it was going all across the bay into Oakland. And I was like, this is incredible. Yeah. And obviously on the beauty of the IoT network is, you can really put those hotspots in a bunch of places so long as they're elevated and get that coverage that relays to another node. But obviously, a lot of the talk recently has been about the mobile network, which is way more of a exact science, I would say, with where they need to be put up in order to provide that utility and carrier offload, for whether it's an MNO like AT&T or for Helium mobile customers. I'm curious because every deployer has sort of a different methodology of how they think about things, and I'd love to just hear you both walk me through your process. So, let's say you buy 10 Helium mobile hotspots and you're looking to deploy them. Like, how do you think about the process by which you scout the sites? And then could you just like tell us about the installation process and sort of interaction with hosts, sort of that end to end flow and like how you go about that?
yeah. So well, at this point, I started with friends and family that had businesses, right? Because I was deploying them there. But early on, when they announced the boosted hexes in Miami, I actually worked with JM of Proof Wireless. We combined forces a little bit there in Miami and deployed remotely, which was a pain, by the way, but it sort of gave us the experience of doing this, out there, and we got chosen for the beta testing of carrier offload, and we were in some boosted hexes, and it was pretty cool to start seeing data flowing through. So, but sort of back in St. Louis, I bought a bunch of devices, started putting them out there. And typically, what I do is we just like go and like scope out the site, like do a site survey, develop a plan, like see where their internet's coming in, or decide to put in our own internet, develop a plan, and then schedule an installation date. If it's a complicated like outdoor or multi-outdoor indoor kind of scenario, I have a crew come in, who's the professional sort of low voltage installers, they do all of the ladder work and roof work these days. So start with the site survey, then go to the installation, and then from there it's just a matter of paying the host. But at this point, I'm not. I have like a couple people doing sales for me, so they're finding hosts. So, and I've got other word of mouth people coming to me. So I'm not. I don't have that the sales part of my job isn't really an issue anymore, because I have people like contacting me to do it. So I almost can't keep up. So that's sort of where I am.
Well, if you need any help with those, just send them my way. I'll make sure they get taken care of real well.
Yeah.
So
Well, Zach, you do a lot of remote. You have a lot of remote stuff
yeah,
going on,
I
right?
do. So when it's like the boots on the ground stuff, what I found works, and I get dunked on quite a bit, but I do door dashing, and not so much that I have to, but I really do find a lot of joy in it. And the beauty of it is when you're using the app, you will know if there's good or bad coverage at different restaurants that you're picking stuff up from. If they have public Wi-Fi, which a lot of them don't because of security risks. And it gives you an amazing opportunity to talk to a manager or business owner instead of a cold call and trying to knock and be a salesperson. So even if it's not a good opportune time to talk to them, then you can get that contact information and then circle back and be like, hey, this is Zach. I was there. I was picking up the nachos yesterday. You got a second to talk? And then a lot of it is like, well, how am I turning my internet into money? And I give them the 30-second talk, and it's always, how much am I going to make? Well, how many nachos are you going to sell? I can't really tell you that, but I can tell you what your percentage is going to be. And then it's like, well, how do I do that? I just want cash. And I have an LLC for my deployment business, and I'll happily send people checks. But what I found to be really effective, and hopefully this helps out others because it's good for the network to be as big as possible. Get out your Coinbase or crypto.com, because I know crypto.com isn't available in all regions. Get your ref code out, send them whoever the link, have them set up their account while you're doing the install, get their Solana address. I do a test transaction so then I have their HNT address and send them one HNT. I have that Solana address. And then if you want to use a smart contract or do it manually, depending on how big your deployment business is, you can then send your payments to that off ramp. And then it helps out a lot because then I don't want to say too much, but from the taxation, because that landscape's constantly changing, I'd much rather have that be dealt with for them instead of me having to do a bunch of submissions to that fun 3-letter agency here in the United States.
Yeah, Kevin, one
Hilarious.
thing that's interesting is you see that deployers often have different processes by which they approach prospective hosts, right? Like I've heard that some deployers go in, think about splitting rewards with the hosts.
Yeah.
Some hosts are interested in some flat cash or something like that.
Yeah.
Some people go in and actually approach hosts with just like value added services and better
Yeah.
coverage and don't mention
Totally.
the crypto at all. I'm curious where you fall on that spectrum.
Yeah, I have a range of those. Like I met somebody who owns a music venue here in town. It's like 600, people inside. That I told him what I did when I met him. And he's like, holy shit! Like we have terrible connectivity in the venue. And I was like, well, I can help with that, right? So he was more interested in improving, his customer experience while people are seeing a band. They want to be able to upload photos and send stuff out, and they just couldn't do it. So in that case, I'm providing him, the utility. That's the primary goal there. But in other cases, people are earning revenue. Yes, it's improving their connectivity in their restaurant or whatever, but they're also are into collecting HNT or even USD, at that point too. So it just depends on what they're looking for ultimately. But I've got it's a giant metal building where there's an indoor baseball field in there, so people can play baseball without having to worry about weather and stuff like that. And of course, you go in there, no one's connected, right? So I put some devices in there, and now I'm providing better connections to T-Mobile and AT&T as a result. So it's a lot of utility in that case, but then they also don't mind the extra
Yeah,
revenue on top of it. Yeah.
totally,
So
totally.
yeah.
And it's all super interesting. And I'm curious, what do you think about the process? Because it's one of those things that I feel like once you do your first couple of deployments, you probably get in a groove and you understand it all. But could be potentially something that feels like there's friction up front. What do you think about like from what people might perceive? What about deploying is probably easier than people think, and what has been sometimes challenging for you?
The hardest sell, hey Zach, the hardest sell is that initial. If they don't understand it, they just don't get how I can come in, put in devices. It costs them nothing, and they get paid, and they get better coverage. Like everyone starts off with, how is this not a scam, right? so so I think that's the biggest hurdle, uh, that I deal with for the most part. Again, with the word of mouth stuff, it's already sold for me, and they're already convinced because they're hearing it from other people that have been earning and having better connectivity in their venues. But that's the biggest one to get over. But once that's done and they start seeing, their customers connecting and more revenue coming in, they're good with it. So
And one other thing, Kevin, that I think is really cool that you've been doing is working with your local communities in a way and getting them onboarded. And it's a big inspiration to us as a foundation because we've been thinking a lot about this concept of DPIN being community built infrastructure and honestly a way to get people together. Like, can you just touch on what you've been doing with some local
yeah.
businesses?
So I mean, this is actually kind of one of the most exciting things I've been doing is that I started off with my local neighborhood association. I went to a meeting and talked to the mayor was there, and everybody was complaining that there weren't enough resources, like there's not enough money to handle all of the issues, right? And I'm like, what the hell? Like this is DPIT. Like we can come in and help the city and provide connectivity and everything else. And everyone's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. That's a little too, like, I'm like wanted to have a meeting with the mayor and talk to them and everything. So but I thought I'd start small, so I talked to the president of the neighborhood association, and I have a restaurant that's in my neighborhood too that has been earning for years. They were earning back in the IoT days, and I talked to them about it, and I said, "What if you donated a portion of your revenue to the neighborhood association?" And again, I talked and then what if we went to the other businesses in the neighborhood and we could install devices, we can they could share all or a portion of their earnings with the neighborhood association, and then that way the neighborhood association has more wealth. I mean, we barely have enough money to cover the trash removal and stuff like that. So even $30, $50 a month or something like that from multiple sites, that's going to add up really quickly. So I'm developing this, what I'm calling the community connectivity initiative, to do this. And I've already got two other neighborhoods interested in this too. So yeah, so I went to another neighborhood meeting in another neighborhood here, and they're into it. And I feel like it's a no brainer because your businesses are getting better connectivity overall, and they can donate a portion or all of their earnings to the community itself. And I think that, that's I can't help but think that this could be scaled up to the municipality level. And I do know the mayor and also of St. Louis, and I have lots of contacts that know her way better than me. So I am hoping to approach her and with a plan to do this like citywide. And then of course you can go to any municipality, any community from there, right? And you can start earning money for and improving the sort of citizen experience, right, wherever they go. So I get a little excited about this because this is what DPIN is all about. Bringing wealth to individuals, community, but also providing a utility that sort of transcends everything that we're doing now, right? So we're not just giving away our data, we're getting paid for our data, and we can do that on a much larger scale.
And
So
it's cool.
anyway.
It's like in a time where people are, online more isolated from their communities than they used to be. Like I hope you don't mind. I read one of the flyers that you had with some of the local businesses you were working with, and it's like it's exciting. It's like doing stuff together as a community again. It's super
Yeah.
cool initiative.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's funny, my daughter even said, she's like, "You're not just connecting them, their phones, but you're actually bringing them together and connecting them
exactly.
physically in a way too." And I like that component of it. So yeah.
Which is awesome. And I know like along that track, like I know some deployers have had a ton of success, stopping into like instead of going business to business, going into
Yeah.
chambers of commerce or like
Yeah.
talking to,
Totally.
municipal officials, and
Yeah.
the reception is pretty awesome. So like, I think for deployers looking to get started and looking to get traction with multiple parties at once, I think like that's a great way to do it.
Yeah,
Super
totally.
interesting.
Start like if there's any new deployers that are interested in doing this, start with your friends or your business that you always go to, the restaurant or DoorDash like Zach does.
I
But
like that was a really interesting like channel to
I
think
know,
about. It
and
makes a ton of sense.
I actually I might want to try that now,
Yeah.
so but yeah, I mean, start with a couple, and then you go to your neighborhood association, go to your chamber of commerce or something like that. Again, the biggest thing you have to convince them is that it isn't a scam,
Right.
right?
Right.
But
It's not.
then,
It's
but
not a
once that,
scam.
well,
Confirmed not a
it's not a
scam.
scam. No, you're providing, real wealth and real connections, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that, and I want to continue to develop that part of this. I mean, nonprofit organizations, they have a whole network of people. It doesn't even have to be a neighborhood association or chamber of commerce. It could be any organization that has contacts that have businesses or locations that they can use a portion of that to benefit that nonprofit. So the fundraising aspect of this, while also enhancing connectivity in communities, I think is unlimited right now. I mean, I there's opportunity on literally every corner. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, no, and I think as more MNOs and MVNOs offload via the hotspots, it's much more exciting to be a deployer because you really can sell that connectivity angle, right? Not just, hey, we're building a network and there's a hope that they will come one day. It's really happening now. And deployments are and deployment strategies are geared around offloading real data. So that's such a more exciting story to tell. I'm curious now. I want to hear your most exciting deployment, whether that is just like the host or venue that you're working with that you're most proud of, and then worst deployment story if you have one.
yeah, I've got a couple of those. I think the best, the coolest thing. There's one thing about deploying devices and putting them on roofs or in restaurants. That's great. But with like putting APs up, right? But one of my hosts has a hotel in South Beach, Miami, and this was I actually worked with Joey early on to do a conversion of their existing Ubiquity network, and all of a sudden the entire hotel is now carrier offload ready, right? And to see the host trusted me. He gave me access to the Unify backend. Their IT guy, after a bunch of questions, gave me admin access, and I went through and put in all of the credentials, and it was so cool to see what's possible where you're turning that extra the Wi-Fi you're already providing is now a revenue source, right? And so I mean, that's when you go into a hotel. Normally you get onto the hotel Wi-Fi because you're not getting a signal from out anywhere else. So you don't have to do that now, right? I mean, in some case, if you want to hook up your laptop, of course, but for the most part, you walk in, you're still connected. You don't even think about hooking up your Wi-Fi at that point because you don't need to. And that hotel is earning extra revenue. I'm talking to an office building. They pay for the service where I can come in, update their network, and then now instead of paying for it, they can get paid for it. I think that's sort of marvelous and opportunity there.
Yeah,
So
no, it's amazing. So yeah, for those in the audience that may not know, there's obviously an indoor helium mobile hotspot that you can buy hardware for and place in venues. There's an outdoor hotspot which you put obviously outdoors and provides coverage outdoors. But then recently, earlier this year, we introduced the concept of Helium Plus, which is basically if you already have a compatible existing Wi-Fi system in your venue or throughout your venue, you can actually not get any new hardware at all, but just with the software over-the-air update, make it compatible to run on Helium for offload. And I was thinking about it, and it almost feels like I've made the analogy before, like a Netflix moment from when they started out by shipping DVDs only, and that's
yeah,
sort of like the hotspots, and like
totally.
the streaming
Oh,
moment is sort of the Helium Plus moment. There's
that's a
obviously a need
great
for
that's
all
a
of it.
great way of putting it. I like
Yeah,
that.
but it's all it's the way that we'll be able to scale the network um, in parallel with the hardware deployments, which we absolutely need to get into the millions of hotspots, which is what the network obviously wants to
Yeah.
achieve.
Yeah, I'm working with a property developer as probably 50 different locations, and a lot of them like an event space for weddings and things like that. They have existing Ubiquity or Cisco networks, and then outside of them there's like crowded busy streets in a park and things like that. So I'm kind of working where I'm deploying an outdoor device for that's aiming at the park, that's using the same internet that's providing the the connectivity in the ballroom or whatever, right? So and then I'm going to convert that too. So um and this deployer is working on a lot of other projects, and I'm going to go right with them and make sure to install some of these on early from the early build outs even. So that's pretty exciting.
That's awesome, and you're not off the hook. We want to hear a bad deployment experience too. We got
Yeah.
to keep it real
Well,
here.
it's funny, the as a deployer, it's always easier to deploy in town, right? Like locally. We tried to do the Miami thing. We had some successes, but it was a big struggle there because we can't, sometimes the technicians that you might hire aren't always reliable. We've had some great experiences for sure, but one of our we had an installation at two different locations, and we had to go back for sort of a service call like a year later. And the new technician is going there, and he's like, "What's this SenseCap IoT device in here?" I'm like, "Well, we didn't install it. We have the other IoT device there." So this deployer or this technician had installed his own IoT device in our enclosure, right?
Oh no,
And
yeah,
was sort
yeah,
of, taking away our IoT, right? I mean, they were both earning, but not obviously not very well. And he had it sort of asserted slightly over,
yeah, yeah. A
right?
little
Not in the
latch on,
exact
a
same.
little add on. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, I mean, there's stuff like that. I've of course had, when I would, send the IoT, the racks out, out in the country somewhere, most of the time they'd be earning. Sometimes people would disappear, can't get a hold of them. In one case, his roommate stole it because he thought it had some value or something, so yeah, I mean, it's mostly been good, right?
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. You
yeah,
got to keep it real. Got to have a story or two.
yeah,
And I'm curious. So one of the things I really like, I've told you this before, want to spend a lot of the next half year doing is thinking about how we can elevate stories like yours and other deployers in the ecosystem, and candidly bring out a bunch of the wisdom that a bunch of you um, have gained over like the past several years doing this. Things like deployer education courses. I know there's been some chatter on channels, on socials and stuff about potential new products that might come out to make the onboarding and unboxing process
yeah,
easier for people that are new to Helium. I'm curious,
totally.
what would you love to see? Like, if you could wave a magic wand, see Helium or the Helium Foundation or other community tools bring to make your life easier? Like, what would you love to see to take this to
you
the next
know
level?
I saw, it was talking about the state of the networks, where Joey was talking about I guess the welcome kit, and or I don't know if that was the name of it, but the idea of of splitting up payments from sort of the source so that I don't have to track it and then do payments, every month. And that is, as I scale up, that is the biggest thing. Even back in the IoT days, that was the biggest pain, was just dealing with all those payments. And if you could just set up all of those from the beginning and not have to sort of deal with it, go straight to their bank account or their wallet, their Solana wallet, that would be a huge weight off of my administration task. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm pretty excited about that.
Totally. Totally. And especially as you start to scale a deployment business, right? There's sort of the long tail of people that have one or two or three deployments. And then, really all of a sudden you're in a situation where you're like got a bunch of spreadsheets or something like that. I'm curious, what would your advice be to, the individual who is super interested in Helium and is looking to install or deploy their first hotspot?
Folk don't mention crypto, right? Don't mention. Just focus on connectivity, enhancing the business customer experience. I think, if I was looking up some statistics, there are more and more people that make decisions on where they go to eat based on the connectivity there. And I installed at a cool cocktail bar restaurant here, and the owners after I was during the installation, they said wanted to go out to this Mexican restaurant that they heard was great, and while they were eating, they wanted to plan their vacation, right? And so they drove all the way out there just because they heard the food was good. They went in there, they ordered, they're ready to plan, and they weren't connected. There's no connectivity in there, and they're like, "We're never going back there."
Yeah.
And
It's
I
like,
mean, I know
it's
that's
table stakes
anecdotal, but
now.
yeah, that's anecdotal, but the thing is that, I've make my decisions. There's a restaurant that I like that if I need to be connected, you have to go outside to check your bank account or whatever, right? So that's not cool, right? And I want to sell them on this as a result of this too. But I know that people, I guess, anecdotally and statistically, people are making decisions based on if they can be connected. Um, on where they go. So
Not only that, it's also just a lot of branding and advertising for restaurants now is the videos that people can upload when they're in
yeah,
there, right? So it's
yeah.
like showing off the experience. It's like you're losing out on free brand advertising.
Oh,
Um,
right. Yeah.
well, cool. I also want to, before we leave, touch on a lot of deployers for Helium also deploy other things. I'm curious, like some of the other projects in Deepin that you find interesting, or not, like whether you deploy it for them or not. Just curious to hear like what's on your top of your list.
I early on, when before Deepin was Deepin, I guess it was, or even before it was Tippin, I guess, I was getting into some other projects like GeoNet and, Demo, HiveMapper. And, I played around with that. I don't drive enough to really, utilize HiveMapper or whatever, but if I have the opportunity in a location to, I consider a location for outdoor helium mobile, for instance, if maybe indoor makes sense. But especially if I'm paying for a connection there, I'm putting a GeoNet device there. I'm putting a WingBits device there. You know what I mean? And the idea of stacking these different devices at the locations, I think is there's even more opportunity. You're just multiplying the potential, right? Or like the deep devices, right? Like there's there's all kinds of opportunity to deploy other deepen projects as well. I mean, I know I'm primarily focused on Helium Mobile right now, but if I'm working at a host site that has an empty hex for GeoNet, they're getting a GeoNet device too, right? So, I mean, and the hosts, they might not care about that, and I'll just pay them sort of the USD equivalent of those earnings, of their share, and then I just keep the tokens myself. So
Yeah, I know it's a lot of deployers already do that type of thing. It's like almost one of the things as an industry that I wish we did better was like whether it's one piece of hardware to serve all these use cases, or just like having the teams more aligned on like deployer operations. Like so much more could get done because the same host that's willing to take one is probably somewhat willing to be interested in deploying the other. That's why I'm super curious to see the Dawn black box. I know that's like the first attempt at like a huge multi-mining effort. It's super interesting as
Yeah,
well.
I mean, I can envision, getting into a place where, I mean, you're just choosing, you just check marking off the devices that'll work in these particular locations and going in and doing an install of multiple devices. I mean, I'm basically already doing that now, but I mean, again, especially if you're paying for your own connection at a host site, um, anything goes, right? Anything that makes sense, like put in there, right? And just grow these networks. This to me, what I'm doing here isn't about just making isn't about just connecting people more. I mean, I like that. I'm not working for AT&T and T-Mobile or whatever, even though that I'm providing service for them, right? But to me, DeepIn and this movement is sort of a larger technological innovation that I believe in, right? And sort of the byproduct of that is me putting devices in restaurants and on roofs and stuff like that, but so all of these DeepIn projects, all of the ones that are legit anyway, they that that's going to transform the future in connection with blockchain and Web3 and everything like that, obviously. But that's going to be a big part of it where everyone is earning by providing data for anything that you can imagine, right? I see that future, and that's why I'm doing this.
Yeah,
So
it's incredible.
yeah,
Well, Kevin, thank you so much. By the
yeah.
way, we didn't just start ignoring Zach. We had some technical issues halfway through. We love you, Zach, but
Zach's the man.
uh,
Zach's the man.
yeah, Zach's the man. But we had to go just solo with Kevin. But Kevin, where can people find out more about you and Flywheel Systems and some of that great work that you're doing with local communities, et cetera?
Yeah, I'm actually working on a page for the Community Connectivity Initiative right now on the website of flywheel.systems. And then I'm on Twitter at Flywheel Systems too. So, or not two isn't the number, but also. So, uh, yeah, so that's where you can find me.
Well, awesome. Keep up the great work. One of our best and finest deployers right here, and appreciate you coming on.
Thanks a lot, Sam. Appreciate it too.